mind is a raging torrent, flooded with rivulets of thought, cascading into a waterfall of creative alternatives.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
A red rose. How romantic.
What you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
What in the hell do you think you're doing here? This is a closed set. Piss on you. I'm working for Mel Brooks.
Oh, it's true. It's true. It's true. It's true.
Hello, I'm film historian Tony Maeda.
And I'm Brad Shreve, who's just a guy who likes movies.
We discuss movies and television from Hollywood's golden age. We go behind the scenes and share our opinions, too.
And of course, being the average guy, my opinions are the ones that matter.
As does your self-delusion. Welcome to Going Hollywood.
Tony, before we get started, I got to tell you it's kind of embarrassing. Well, it's a little personal about what I did while we were on hiatus.
Okay, you want to share that? All right.
Yeah, things have been really difficult, stressful. I've been depressed and full of anxiety. So I had to check myself into the Psychoneurotic Institute for the very, very nervous.
Were you suffering from high anxiety? Which is actually a medical term. It's become a medical term for severe anxiety, high anxiety.
I know. When I was trying to find the movie, information on the movie, I kept having to put movie after it because I kept getting all these medical websites. I'm like, what the hell? Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. We're back. Season 2.
Listener, we're glad you're here with us.
We're glad you're here, too. Thank you for coming back and joining us for Season 2 of Going Hollywood. That didn't seem like a long hiatus. Didn't feel long. I mean, and nothing happened at all. Nothing much happened at all the first few months of 2025. Let me tell you, the world isn't ending. It just feels like it. We are here. We are back. We ain't going anywhere. I feel that in so many levels. But it's good to be back. It's good to see you, Brad. I'm very excited about our season premiere and we hinted a little bit about it. We've been talking about it, and we decided, yes, it was going to be the unofficial title. I think we're calling it is the Battle of the Brooks, but it's not a battle because we both love both of these movies. You love one more than I do, and I love one more than you do, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, indeed, this is our season premiere, Mel Brooks. We're celebrating Mel Brooks, and we are talking about what's the first one we're talking about, Brad?
It's a movie I've seen once or twice. Oh, Blazing Saddles. That's what it is.
He wore a blazing saddle. Okay, I'm not going to sing. And not verses, but one of my favorite movies, High Anxiety.
High Anxiety.
There you go. Both have theme songs, both written by Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks sings the theme song for High Anxiety. He doesn't sing the theme song for Blazing Saddles.
And they're both really good.
Oh, he's a great songwriter. He won, the producers. He himself won 3 Tonys that night for the producers. When we did our top 5 episodes last year, we dipped into both of these films a little bit because High Anxiety was one of mine and Blazing Saddles was one of yours. And that's when I said, maybe someday we'll talk about both of them together. And that's what we're doing.
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing. So, but before we start, can we just talk a little bit about Mel Brooks?
Sure.
I just want to say something about Mel Brooks. He 98 years old. Okay. He will be 99 on June 28th. And I had the good fortune to see Mel at the Peabody Awards last year, where he got an honorary award. And he is just as funny and sharp and Mel Brooksian as ever. And he's just as adorable too. I think he's so adorable. And what a career. What an EGOT winner. Okay. We know what an EGOT is, right? An EGOT is, people don't know, an Emmy Award, a Grammy Award, an Academy Award, Oscar, and a Tony Award. He's won all of them multiple times, and some of them.
No surprise. And on top of all that, you just can't help but love him when you watch him interviewed, or you're like, okay, this is definitely the guy that made these movies.
Yeah, he's such a sweetheart. And he was married to the incredible Anne Bancroft.
What a pair.
What a pair. You know, it's funny because when you first hear that, I think most people's first reaction that Anne Bancroft and Mel Brooks are together. But then when you get to know Anne Bancroft,
Yeah.
and you get to see what a nut job she was in the best way, a funny, sharp, brilliant woman. Then you get it. Because she loved the humor. They had very similar humor. And Mel Brooks also has a very serious side. After the success of these early films in the 70s, he created Brooks Films. And Brooks Films let's just talk about this for a minute. Brooks Films created The Elephant Man, Francis, The Fly. So he made Brooks Films because he thought people would immediately think, oh, Mel Brooks produced this, it must be a comedy. And he really wanted to do serious films. So these are both incredibly accomplished people. Mel, still going strong at 98. God love him. I hope he makes it to 100 because he is just a true gem.
Yes, he is. And do you know about Mel's son? This is something I learned just recently.
Max Brooks.
World War Z is a fun movie. Not the best movie in the world, but I like to watch it because it's a lot of fun. I like disaster films and end-of-the-world films. I don't know why, especially if I'm feeling sad. But the book, which I have not read, has had glowing reviews from fans.
Mm-hmm.
So World War Z, the novel, was written by Max Brooks, who is their son.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about different.
Well, yeah, but he, I guess his mother, Mel, said that Anne always knew he was a writer. He was dyslexic when he was growing up, and she gave up her career for a while to help him deal with the dyslexia and to educate him and educate his teachers. And he became a New York Times bestselling author. So, I mean, pretty good gene pool to come from, first of all. You come from Anne Bancroft and Mel Brooks. Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. He had a small bit part in their movie To Be or Not to Be.
Yeah.
They did together. But he decided he was not an actor.
And that was the only film they did together, isn't it?
Well, she had a cameo in Silent Movie.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And when you see them in To Be or Not to Be, you totally get it. You totally get why these people are together because they are the same level of insanity, of crazy insanity. And Bancroft could also just turn around and play a nun in Agnes of God or do, one of my favorite movies, Garbo Talks. She was just an incredible actress. And I mean, but you really get, one of Brooks's films was also another movie that I love called Fatso that Anne wrote and directed. Starring Dom DeLuise. It was one of Brooks' first films. And I would love to talk about Fatso sometime if we ever let's just do one real quick. Because it's not, it doesn't have quite the heft of The Elephant Man or Francis, but it's a really fun movie. And it's a movie I have a soft spot for because it was one that some of my dear friends and I just would laugh and laugh and laugh about. But we're not talking about Fatso. We're going to start off with Blazing Saddles from 1974. And Brad, since this is one of your top movies, I think you should start us off. I'll give you some background, but I want you to start it off. Why do you love this movie so much?
As I said in our top 5 films that we did, it is non-stop funny. There are some bomb jokes in there, but Mel has them coming at you so fast.
Right.
You miss them because the next one is hysterical. It's timeless, which when we get to high anxiety is not timeless. I learned that recently. But Blazing Saddles is totally timeless. It does make people squirm. Have I talked about reaction videos on YouTube?
You said you were watching some.
Yeah, I've totally become addicted to them. I thought they were the stupidest thing on earth. Well, I watched the ones where they watch Blazing Saddles, and they are these younger kids are so uncomfortable with the language and the whole thing that I think we got it back then. It still made people uncomfortable, but we got it. In fact, Burt Gilliam, who played, I can't think of his name, he was the sidekick to Slim Pickens.
Yes.
Okay. Cleveland Little had to pull him aside and say,
yes,
it's okay to say the N-word. Call me that. Just let me have it. That's this film.
Right. No.
But he was so uncomfortable, he didn't want to do it.
Well, I think, we've come so far that we've also drifted back. It's kind of interesting to think that things could happen in 1974. I think All in the Family is a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that All in the Family would fly on TV today, maybe on a HBO or a Netflix or something like that, but I don't think on network TV. And it's shocking to us. I'm shocked. When I watch Blazing Saddles again in preparation for this podcast episode, I get shocked too. I do, because it's just to hear that word, to hear all those words, to hear the N word, to hear the F word, which of course gets my cackles up, as opposed to the F bomb, which I love and I'll say continually the rest of my life. I have no problem saying fuck, but the F word. But you have to look at it. It's challenging because you have to look at it as what was he trying to do? And we said this in our top 5 episode. He was not only taking a stab at racism, he was taking a bayonet
Yes.
to racism. And that's how he had to do it.
It wouldn't have worked otherwise.
No, it wouldn't have.
In fact, it went on network television. I don't know if you ever saw the network version.
I've seen scenes from it.
Oh, my God. Well, why would you have that on network television? They cut out everything. All the language was cut out. I think you were going to mention the farting scene.
Yeah, the campfire scene. Yeah. They took out the sound.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
These guys are just standing up and down with no sound.
It's like weird choreography. It's like weird choreography. It's like, why are they getting up there? There's no sound. It's hysterical that they did that. It's hysterical that they did that. Why bother showing it if you're gonna take the teeth out of it? It's just, it is what it is. I mean, I really, really appreciate it. Obviously, sometimes for those reasons, I think that's why I prefer High Anxiety. I feel like High Anxiety is just a little kinder and gentler, even though there's some real potty humor in High Anxiety. It's just it's a kinder and gentler Mel Brooks, and maybe that's why I appreciate it more. But you can't deny, first of all, Blazing Saddles was a tremendous success. Tremendous success. I know we'll probably go over the stats, but didn't it make something like $90 million on a budget of $2 or $3 million?
About $2.5 million, and the number I kept seeing over and over again was 119 mil.
Well, that sounds about right. I know it was damn close to 100 million.
Now, I saw on some sites that it was the highest grossing film of 1974, and others I saw that it was Towering Inferno. I think you told me before it was Towering Inferno.
I believe it's Towering Inferno.
Yeah, but they must have been close.
But it made $119 million on a budget of $2 million. $2 million it cost to make this, and it made $119 million. So, I mean, you can't argue with that kind of success. And this is what's important about it. And just a little bit of the backstory before we talk about the movie, because that's what I do. Mel Brooks was at the point in his career, as we know, Mel Brooks started working for Sid Caesar, Your Show of Shows, Caesar's Hour. He was with that incredible group of writers, Neil Simon, Danny Simon, later Woody Allen, Larry Gelbart. I mean, these people were all in one room writing comedy.
It's amazing.
It's incredible. And there have been, My Favorite Year, another Brooks film, is kind of based on that experience. Laughter on the 23rd Floor was Neil Simon's take on that experience. So it's kind of a mythic thing. Mel then later created, with Buck Henry, he created Get Smart, which is a wonderful series. The 2,000-Year-Old Man, I think, was probably his first big splash as a performer, which he did with Carl Reiner. But by the time it came to Blazing Saddles, he had done 2 films. He'd done The Producers, and he'd done The 12 Chairs. And Mel said both of which he made about $25,000 from. So they were critical successes. He won an Oscar for The Producers. So he said, I was at a point in my career where I was critically acclaimed, but I had no money. And this was a problem. He said, so he was walking down 57th Street in New York, and it had just rained. He was like staring down into the gutter at the water going through the gutter. And he heard someone say, "Hey, Mel." And he turned around, and it was his agent. His agent was David Beagleman. Someday we'll talk about David Beagleman and Freddie Fields, because they were 2 real Hollywood characters. They had this agency called Creative Management Associates, CMA. And they represented all the big ones. They represented Judy first, and Judy used to call them Leopold and Loeb. So now gives you an idea about Beagleman and Fields. Anyway, he said, "Mel, what's going on?" And I just left you a message. I have a movie. Come back to my office. Let's talk. I think I have a movie for you. So they went back to Beagleman's office, and he said, I have a script that I think you'd be really, really good for. It's called Tex X. It's by a writer named Andrew Bergman. And Mel said, "You know what, David? I only work on my own projects. I only write and direct things I create." And Beagleman said, "I think I can get you $100,000. And Mel said, "Let me rephrase that. I usually only work on things I write and create." So anyway, Mel read Tex X. He loved it. What was extraordinary about Tex X is it was a spoof. And it was set in the West in 1874 with dialogue from 1974. And I think that's pretty much what you have to say about the parameters about Blazing Saddles. It's an anachronistic film. It's full of anachronisms because the attitude, the dialogue, the stances are all in 1974, taking place in 1874.
And what's funny to me is I always wondered why it was originally called Tex-Ex. So I'm like, where did they get that out of the blue for some strange reason? It was a play on Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I just learned that recently. I've always wondered about it. I'm glad they didn't go with Black Bart, which was the next name they were going to use. Though they did use it for the TV movie, which we can touch on, but oh my God.
Yeah, that's I've heard.
It's available on YouTube, y'all. If you want to be bored, go watch Black Bart, which is a take on Blazing Saddles. It was actually the pilot to a series that didn't happen, starring Louis Gossett Jr. as Bart.
Well, there you go. Well, that's amazing. Well, you know, Black Bart is such a legendary Western name.
Exactly.
But I mean,
it was too on the nose to me.
It was probably, I don't think that worked. But so Mel decided to do it. Mel decided he was going to write it, but he wanted to recreate the writer's room that he, as I said just a little bit ago, he has experienced as a young writer in New York working for Sid Caesar. He wanted to have a group he didn't want to write it by himself. Obviously, he was going to bring back Andrew Bergman. It was Andrew Bergman's story. So he had Andrew Bergman, and he wanted to surround himself with writers that thought the way he did. And first person he looked to, and I know you know this, Brad, but the first person he looked to join his writing team was, who was it?
Richard Pryor.
Isn't that amazing? I love it.
It is amazing. He also wanted Richard for Black Bart, and I'm so glad that didn't happen.
Well, yeah.
Because Richard's over the top. I think he's a ham. And I don't think that would have worked.
Well,
Cleveland Little played it not straight, but, he was a lot more subtle than Pryor would have been.
Well, yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, and also there was no way Warner Brothers was going to allow Pryor to do it. Pryor's reputation. Pryor hadn't made a film yet. So, I mean, this was before Silver Streak. This was before, the Stir Crazy.
But already known for his substance abuse problem.
Yeah, he had a really bad reputation still. But he was an extraordinary writer. He was an extraordinary performer. So Mel wanted Richard Pryor. He had two other friends, a former lawyer, Norman Steinberg, and Norman's friend, a former dentist, Alan Younger. I love how these lawyers and dentists really want to be comedy writers. I'm a lawyer. I'm a dentist. I really want to be a comedy writer. And Mel said that he hung a sign on the wall that said, "First, we laugh." That was his guiding principle, that they laugh first. If they laughed, they knew it was going to be something that was workable. And they began working on this parody of the West. And that's how it all started.
And, you asked me why I thought this was such a great film. Not only is it hysterically funny, though, I hate the term pushing the envelope. It's the only one that comes to my head. Not only did Mel push the envelope, he is, I think, the only person that could have gotten away with this film.
Oh, I think so.
That just shows his brilliance.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, Springtime for Hitler in the producers. I mean, this was not new territory to Mel. Mel believes the only way, Mel always said famously, the only way, how do you get revenge on Hitler? You make fun of him. So Mel uses humor, and sometimes people can think it goes too far, but you get the point. But what's really important, and Mel said this, and he said this is like a great lesson for comedy writers. So any comedy writers out there, pay attention, because this is from Mel Brooks. He said, comedy has to have an engine to drive it. You just can't have jokes flying. There's got to be a engine driving it. And in Blazing Saddles, that engine is racial prejudice. And that's the meat behind Blazing Saddles, the structure, the engine that drives the story. So we accept this insanity because he's skewing racial prejudice, a loving satiric look at Westerns and the Western genre.
Yeah, back to these reaction videos. I watch young adults watching All in the Family, but they're watching clips of Archie, and they're like, this is so offensive. How to get away with it? And then in the comments, you see older adults saying, you can't take these out of context. You have to watch the whole episode.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the same way with Blazing Saddles.
It is. Exactly.
If you don't watch the whole episode, you're going to think it's a racist, trashy movie.
You have to watch the whole thing.
Yes.
You do. You really do. And what's also interesting, and we said this before in our top 5, and this is the same thing this is true of Young Frankenstein. This is true of High Anxiety. This is true of Blazing Saddles, and it was designed this way. You don't have to know Westerns to love Blazing Saddles.
It helps, but absolutely not.
It helps,
Yeah.
but absolutely not. It's like high anxiety. You don't have to know Hitchcock. As I told you, I had not seen a Hitchcock, or maybe I'd seen one. I obviously had probably seen Psycho before I saw High Anxiety, and I loved it because they stand on their own as their own creation. But that being said, there's some wonderful shout outs to, in Blazing Saddles. I mean, the name's known. Black Bart is a Western name. Slim Pickens, who was a Western character actor.
Slim Pickens was so perfect. So perfect. There's a rumor that I want to know if this is true. I've seen this. I think even the Saturday Evening Post said it, and I'm having a hard time believing it's true.
Mm-hmm.
What they're saying is that to prepare for this movie, Slim Pickens would sleep outside hugging his Winchester rifle to get in Taggart's mind. I'm like, this guy played Westerns.
Oh my God.
Why would he? That doesn't even make sense.
He was a former rodeo rider.
Yes.
Okay. And he was a legendary film actor from the 40s. I mean, Santa Fe Passage, The Sheepman, Tonka. No,
That's an urban legend I'm not buying.
No, it's not at all. But here's something, and for people who are trying to play Slim Pickens, maybe this will jog your memory. In addition to playing in Blazing Saddles, probably his most famous role is as Major King Kong in Dr. Strangelove. He's the one who rides the bomb. So that's who Slim Pickens is, if you weren't aware who Slim Pickens was.
Yeah, love or hate Dr. Strangelove, him flying down on that nuclear missile yelling, "Yeehaw!" is so iconic. Yeah. It's just amazing.
But he's not the main character in this, as we were saying. The main character's name is Black Bart, played by the incredibly handsome Cleavon Little. I mean, wow.
And when he's in his Gucci cowboy suit,
what a handsome man. But do you know, we said Richard Pryor, Mel wanted Richard Pryor, but do you know who the original choice was back when it was still called Tex X?
No, I don't.
They originally wanted James Earl Jones.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow.
That would have had even more gravitas. I don't know. I have the utmost respect for James Earl Jones, but I don't know that he could have. Yeah, I don't know that it necessarily would have worked with.
It's so hard sitting back after the fact to say, I can't imagine them in the role. It would have been a different movie, but maybe it just as good. So you never can say.
What's great about Cleavon Little is he's got that humor. He's got that look on his face. Like, I don't know, this is all pretend, folks. This is all just a big lark, and that's what's so wonderful about his performances. He doesn't take it seriously. So therefore, we don't take it seriously.
It's a lot like What's Up, Doc? It's a cartoon.
Yes, exactly.
There's so much, like even the scene where he blows up Mongo, you see them coming in and going out of that saloon. Yeah. And I'm like, the first time I saw it, I thought, that's really cheesy. You see the shadow on the backdrop as they leave, come and go. The town is in the backdrop as they're leaving. Yeah. And then later I thought, no, that's the way old Westerns were. So it should be there.
No, it is. It's very cartoony. And he is, as we've said a million times, he is us. He's the one we identify with. Yeah. Because he's the sanest one. So he's surrounded by all these crazies in this cartoon because it's a spoof. Same as a farce, same family. It's concerned with it's in its own reality, but you have that one person to identify with that represents the audience that is around all these. So the other kooks around him, like Lily Von Shtupp, like Hedley Lamar, like the brilliant Harvey Korman. Oh my God. Hedley. Do you know, here's a little trivia question. Well, it's not a trivia question, but here's something. I wonder if you knew this. Do you know that the real Hedy Lamar, who was a bombshell, literally 40s actress, sued Mel Brooks
for $10 million, I think.
Yes. Isn't that funny?
And that is why he wrote in, because he says to Harvey Korman's character, he calls him Hedy. Mm-hmm. And Korman goes, it's Hedley. And he says, this is 1874. You'll be able to sue her.
Yes.
He wrote that in because of that lawsuit.
Hedy Lamar was a gorgeous woman. There's a whole story about Hedy Lamar, and she basically created wireless communications, but that's another podcast. Or go watch one of my documentaries. I have a documentary on it. Anyway, so we've got Harvey Korman playing Hedley Lamar. Who exactly is Hedley? Well, let's do this. I'm going to let you do this because this is your baby. Tell us a little bit about the people of Rock Ridge, the town that we are visiting in this Western. Who are we talking about here?
Well, let's start with Hedley because he's not in Rock Ridge. He's whatever the capital is of the territory. Right. It's a territory, right? It's not a state yet.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, Hedley Lamar is basically the governor's right-hand man.
Right.
The governor is a total nincompoop, mentally challenged Mel Brooks.
William J. Petalmain is his name.
And I learned where that name came from.
Go ahead.
Do you know where it came from?
Yeah, but you tell us.
There was a flatulent artist who would get on stage and basically blow things out and do things with farts. And his stage name was Le Petalmain. His real name was Joseph Pujol. He was from the 1800s.
Now, Mel is obsessed with flatulence in this film.
Obviously.
It's one of the funniest things. It's one of the funniest things.
So Hedley is a crooked individual. And, as much as I've loved this film, it really was this last time that I watched it this past week that I really was like, damn, Harvey nailed it. He just hit a home run with this role.
He is so brilliant. He really is. Mel considered him the most brilliant sketch comedian ever. And I got to tell you, watching this and watching High Anxiety again, and as we all know from his work on the Carol Burnett Show, which is how Mel first came to his attention. He came to Mel's attention. He is, I agree. Harvey Korman's level of commitment to the most ridiculous circumstances is unparalleled. And it's what made him. Carol Burnett also said that. She said he was the best. He was the best sketch comedian she'd ever known. And he clearly shows it in this film because he's so invested. He believes in every single moment. In High Anxiety, too, I want to talk about him in High Anxiety. There's one specific moment in High Anxiety where it's just great. It's so great. So yes. So Harvey Korman plays Hedley Lamar, who's the governor's assistant. Slim Pickens plays Taggart, who is Hedley's henchman, basically, right? Would be safe to call him that?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's in charge of building the new railroad, and he is Hedley's henchman. And then sticking with the villains, Slim Pickens' sidekick is Bert Gilliam, who plays Lyle. And I think he plays great in his role, too.
He's wonderful.
Yep. Those are the villains for the most part. In the town, let's start with Cleavon Little. He is Bart. He is a man that worked on the railroad with other black men that not long after slavery, as well as some Asian folks as well.
Yes.
And we know it just was a lot of people died building these railroads.
Yeah.
So anyway, he has an incident with Slim Pickens. He basically hits him in the back of the head with a shovel. He's due to be hanged. And Harvey Korman comes up with the great idea that he will run the people of Rock Ridge out of town if he gives them a black sheriff.
Exactly.
And he wants to take over this town because he wants to put the railroad through there and make a fortune.
Yes, exactly.
Now, Black Bart's sidekick is a drunk former, what do you call him? The guy that shot, a gun shooter. Thank you. That was the name. Named Jim, also known as the Waco Kid. Not one of my favorite actors. This is probably blasphemous. I'm not a huge fan of Gene Wilder. So I didn't hate him in this role. I wish somebody else was in it.
Well, you know who was originally supposed to do it, right?
John Wayne, I think.
Well, no, there's a story about that.
Oh, no, Gig Young.
Gig Young. Yeah, Mel Brooks.
He actually was there one day on the job, wasn't he?
He was there one day and he was fired because he was drunk. And he couldn't do it. Mel Brooks ran into John Wayne at the commissary at Warner Brothers and was like having palpitations. He was like, Mr. Wayne. And he's like, oh, Mel Brooks, I love the producers. And he said, I have a script with a part for you. Would you even consider reading it? And John Wayne said, of course. So John Wayne took it home and read it. And he said, let's meet here tomorrow at the same time and I'll talk to you. And he said, Mel, I love it. It's this great script. He said, I can't do it. He said, my audience would never accept me in a film where a character says, blow it out your ass. He said, but I'll be the first person in line to buy a ticket when it's on. So, yes.
Absolutely.
So, John Wayne didn't do it. Yes. Originally, the Waco Kid was Gig Young, who was a light comedic actor. He's known for Desk Set, Old Acquaintance, but he had just won an Oscar for They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Which we're going to be talking about coming up. And he kind of stunned Hollywood with this performance, but he was also very well known as a very heavy drinker. He assured Mel that he was on the wagon, that he was sober, that he was going to be fine for this. And on the first day of filming, the very first scene where the Waco Kid meets Black Bart, he couldn't get his lines out.
He put a little of himself too much in that role.
He put a little too much of himself. He was plastered. And then he started spewing green vomit. And then
no.
Yeah, and then he was taken off the set. So Mel had a real problem. He's like, this was a Friday, Mel says. He didn't know what to do. And he thought, Gene Wilder. So he called Gene Wilder. Gene Wilder played Leo Bloom in The Producers, and they were very close friends. He had just made his film debut in Bonnie and Clyde the same year as The Producers. And he really did this as a favor to Brooks, because the Waco Kid was not supposed to be this young, he wasn't supposed to be Gene Wilder. He was supposed to be an old alcoholic. Kind of like Gig Young, just not literally. The actor wasn't supposed to be an alcoholic, but he agreed to do it. He did it as a favor for Mel Brooks. So he actually flew from New York to LA and was on the set the following Monday doing the same scene that Gig Young was doing on a Friday. And that's how Gene Wilder ended up.
That's impressive.
It is impressive. And what's even more impressive is, and how these things work, while they were making the film, Gene Wilder was working on something. He'd be working on something whenever they have a break. And finally Mel said, Gene, what are you working on? And Gene said, I want to do a movie that's a takeoff on horror films. And so they met, and that's where Young Frankenstein was born, on the set of Blazing Saddles. So everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Gig Young had a very tragic end, unfortunately. He killed his young wife and then himself in 1978. He was a very troubled man. And it's very, very sad. But we got Gene Wilder in the role of the Waco Kid. And yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, he's not exactly right, but I still think he's great.
An older individual in that role, now that you mentioned, would have made more sense.
Right. Absolutely.
But it's okay.
But they're a great team.
I want to wrap up the other two major characters because I really want to talk about the townsfolk.
Yes, but there's one very important one that we haven't gotten to yet.
Well, there's two. I'm going to first say Alex Karras.
Right.
He was an ex-football player, big, beefy man who plays Mongo. To describe Mongo is when Mongo gets into town, Bart puts on his gun belt, and the Waco Kid says, "Oh, don't shoot him! You'll just make him mad." So he was the villain to begin with. He later turns a good guy, and then the last one, somebody who was, I guess she was okay for this role, Madeline Kahn. As the voluptuous Lily Van Stoop. And probably one of the most beautiful singers there ever was.
Oh, that's the thing about Madeline. Exactly. Well, here's the thing. So Madeline Kahn plays Lily Von Stoop. She is a takeoff on Marlene Dietrich in Destry Rides Again. And go look it up if you don't know what Destry Rides Again is. And she's doing Dietrich. And the brilliant thing about Madeline Kahn is Madeline Kahn was an operatically trained singer. Okay, she could have sung opera. She wanted to be an opera singer. It is very difficult to sing only slightly off key. It's very difficult to sing under the pitch. Bad actors can sing badly, yeah, but it's not real. When people are really singing and they're just slightly off pitch, that's what Dietrich would do. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And because Kahn was operatically trained, she could do it. And Mel Brooks said he was blown away by that. And he was also blown away by her Dietrich impression. I mean, she's so funny.
Awesome.
All the W's. Bismarck? It's true. It's true.
Is Bismarck a herring?
Is Bismarck? That's it, exactly. Is Bismarck a herring? She's so funny. She does this wonderful song called I'm Tired, which Mel also wrote, which is just the most hysterically funny takeoff on every song that Dietrich ever did. And, it's funny when there's a couple things, and I know you want to talk about the townspeople, but there's a Lucy story with Madeline Kahn and Blazing Saddles, which I want to talk about.
I'm going to hear it
later. I'll get to it. Remind me. But when he first, Mel said if he couldn't get Madeline Kahn to play Lily Von Stoop, he didn't think he was going to make the film. He said because he had seen her do Dietrich, he'd seen her on Broadway, he saw her in What's Up, Doc, and he just fell in love with her. And when they first met, they didn't know each other. When he first met, he said, I need to see your legs. And Madeline Kahn was like, oh, this is one of these kind of auditions, huh? But it's like, no. Because of Dietrich, I just need to make sure. And he said, and her legs were beautiful. And they are beautiful. She's a beautiful woman. We talked a little bit about how she kind of got a complex from Eunice Burns. and how she always tried to vary her parts after that to Trixie Delight and Paper Moon in this part, more, Princess Nympho in History of the World Part 1, where she's a real sexual being, a very beautiful woman, high anxiety. But yeah, Khan is brilliant, and Khan got an Academy Award nomination as Best Supporting Actor, one of the 3 Oscar nominations this film got. To get an Oscar nomination not only for a comedy, but for a parody, a spoof, is a tremendous achievement. That's how brilliant Madeline Kahn is in this movie.
It's hard for me to decide if she was better in What's Up, Doc or better in this, and I think they're equal.
It's
two different, very
It's completely different. That's the
Yeah.
thing. They're totally different. That's why she was such a genius. Every
Yes.
single Mel Brooks film she's done, Paper Moon, Trixie Delight. I think I said that before. Watch her as Eunice Burns, and watch her as Trixie Delight, then watch her as Lily von Stupp, and then watch her as Princess Nympho. They are 3 Empress Nympho. They are 4 separate characterizations. And my Lucy story really quickly is that Madeline was supposed to play Gooch in the musical version of Mame. In the musical, she was cast in the musical film of Mame with Lucy. And Lucy was of the mindset, because of television, she had 4 days to film a show, you had to have your characters down at the first reading. You had to know them. You had to be performance ready. Madeline is not this way. Madeline is of the stage. Madeline needs to create a character. She wanted to create her own Gooch. So after a couple of weeks, Lucy said to Madeline, when are we going to see your Gooch? And Madeline said, you are seeing my Gooch. And Lucy said, out. So she fired her. Madeline Kahn was fired from Mame and went immediately into Blazing Saddles and got an Oscar nomination. And Lucy always held that she did that on purpose. And I don't know if that's true, but I tell you, she really dodged a bullet. Let me tell you right now. I mean, of the 2, a massive musical bomb with Lucy or an Oscar-nominated role with Mel Brooks, I think I kind of go with Mel Brooks.
And when are we going to see your Gooch? It sounds rather dirty. So I just want to run down through the town people. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I'm just going to name names. Great character actors. I mean, unbelievable cast. And so you either know these names or you don't. And Tony, you can go into a little more detail if you want. We had David Huddleston, Liam Dunn, lovely and Dunn, John Hillerman, George Firth. There's Carol Arthur, trying to think of the ones people would most likely know. Robert Collier. If you saw all these people's faces, you know who they were.
Sure. Dom DeLuise.
Oh, Dom DeLuise, yes. I wasn't thinking the town. He's not a townsperson, but yeah, he was awesome. Right. But I forgot him. He's awesome.
And what's interesting about all these townspeople? What do they have in common?
All their last names are Johnson.
So you have Howard Johnson, who has an orange roof on his outhouse. Yeah. You have Olson Johnson,
one flavor ice cream.
Gabby Johnson, Van Johnson. These are all, it's funny. It's so, and Mel said, Johnson's such a great name. It's just a perfect name to name all these people Johnson. And it's just so funny when they have the meeting where they're trying to figure out what to do about everything. And they're saying, yes, Brother Johnson, believe what Van Johnson said. I want to listen to Brother Howard Johnson. It's just so funny. It's so funny.
Going back to these reaction videos, I was watching this young couple watching that film, and the thing came up about Howard Johnson's the orange roof on Howard Johnson's outhouse, and they looked at each other and said, "I think there's a joke in there somewhere."
Well, the school teacher, played by Carol Arthur, who played Harriet Johnson, is actually Dom DeLuise's wife.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's Mrs. Dom DeLuise. And Dom DeLuise is not. You're right. He's not in the townspeople. He's in. When this movie takes its incredibly funny turn, which we'll get to. But do you want to talk a little bit about, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about the production? You want to talk about the plot a little bit? Let people know exactly what happens in this movie?
Well, I can do the plot really quickly. I think most people have probably seen it if they're listening to our show. So I'd like you to get a little more into the production of it. But I'll just very quickly say, there's the town of Rock Ridge. It is where Harvey Korman's character wants to put the railroad through, and the town is in the way. So he wants to get the people to leave the town so that he can take over the town and make a fortune off of putting the railroad through. So he gets Black Bart convinces the governor to get Black Bart to be the first black sheriff, saying that the governor will be in history. Even if he dies in one day, he'll still be in history. And we'll make him the sheriff. And because we want somebody so vile, or I don't know what the word he is, that they'll leave in droves.
Yeah.
So Bart shows up and he's not well received. In fact, this very lovely old lady who he walks up to and says, "Ain't it a lovely morning, ma'am?" She says, "Up yours," in the N-word. Just like, oh, it just catches you off guard. And what's even better is later when he does a good deed and she comes back and gives him a pie, she goes away and then she comes back and says, "Of course you'll have the," I don't know, "of course you'll have the good manners not to tell anyone I talked to you."
Yes.
Something of that nature.
Well, yes, they're all incredibly prejudiced. And it is difficult with 25 ears, at least it is for me, to hear the N-word over and over again. They don't, it's not quite as much as I remember from watching this movie when I was a kid. So I don't think it was quite as much, but it's still said frequently. And it is very difficult to hear. In fact, and Mel Brooks had issues with this too. Now, Mel Brooks is writing this, but Mel Brooks had a lot of issues with how far he was pushing the envelope. He wasn't pushing an envelope. He was driving it off the cliff. Yeah. And he said that particularly in the campfire scene with the flatulence and the N-word, probably I'd like to think the F word too, because Mel is a decent, kind person. He said that he went to talk to the head of production at Warner Brothers, John Calley, that we talked a little bit about during our What's Up Doc episode. He was the head of production at Warner Brothers at this time. And he said something to Mel, which stuck with Mel. He said he remembered from then on, whenever he questioned anything, he said to Mel, "If you're going to step up to the bell, ring it." And Mel took that advice and ran with it. He's like, "You're right. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that." So that's why it works, because he goes for it. He doesn't pull back. He goes for it. And it's the driving force behind this comedy.
Absolutely. And then Slim Pickens becomes the head of the Marauders that go into Rock Ridge, and they're stampeding townsfolk and raping cattle. The words right out of the movie. I love the song, "There Was a Peaceful Town Called Rock Ridge."
Yes, it's great.
Yeah. "Are we to stay up or up and quit? There's no avoiding this decision. Our town is turning into shit." That's the final lines in the movie. And then Bart saves the day by saving the townsfolk and saving the town. So that's how the movie ends. And then he rides off with the Waco Kid into the sunset, and then they ride on their horses, and then they get in their limousine and drive away. Yeah. So
yes. Well, here's what I love about this movie, and here to me this is a saving grace, is just at the point where you think, okay, how is this going to end? Mel Brooks doesn't just break the fourth wall; he blows it apart. Because in the last scene, as they're having the big fight, the camera pulls back and pulls back and pulls back. And suddenly you're not in Rock Ridge, you're on the Warner Brothers lot, and you see this huge sound stage. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm in Burbank, California. And the camera moves into the sound stage to a musical being directed by, it's a Busby Berkeley type musical being directed by Buddy Bizarre, who is Dom DeLuise, based on Busby Berkeley. And suddenly the townspeople who've been fighting crash into the soundstage and start fighting with each other, start fighting with the dancers in the musical number.
The rough and tumble townfolk butted in on the dancers were a large cast of, let's say, effeminate men that Dom DeLuise frequently uses the F word on.
Yes, yeah.
And so them to have them, and then the cowboys burst in is just perfect.
And they start fighting. But what's funny is what happens in one of them, they start fighting and they go behind this scrim, behind this flat, and they're behind the flat, and they come around the other side of the flat, and they've got their arms around each other and they're saying, "Let's go over to my place." It's just the fourth wall is gone. And then it just goes to insanity from there. It goes to a pie fight in the commissary when Hedley Lamar comes out of the restroom, the men's room, and sees this pie fight going on, ducks back in again, puts shaving cream on his face, and walks out again so it looks like he's been hit with a pie so he doesn't get hit. Walks out of the studio gates onto Alameda Street in Burbank hails a car and says, "Drive me off this picture."
I got to say one thing about the commissary. Not only was it total chaos with all these different characters throwing pies at each other, in the background, you have Hitler doing his salute in fast action.
He's got to have a Hitler in there. I thought that was so funny. I love that. Oh, my God. So Hedley Lamarr is driven off this movie, but he's not. He's driven to Grauman's Chinese Theater, where Blazing Saddles is playing. It's so meta. It's before meta even existed. It was meta.
Mm-hmm.
He gets his popcorn. Harvey Korman. He gets his popcorn. He goes down and he's watching the film Blazing Saddles on the screen. No, what am I saying? Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then Black Bart, Cleavon Little, comes in Grauman's Chinese Theater on a horse and runs him to the forecourt. And that's where Hedley Lamarr meets his end. He's shot and he falls on the footprints of Douglas Fairbanks. And his last dying words are, he looks at Douglas Fairbanks' footprints and he goes, "How did he do those stunts with such little feet?" He dies. Oh, and that's the end of Hedley Lamarr. Hedley Lamarr.
Hedley Lamarr. That's the end of Hedley.
Yeah.
And then Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder is the Waco Kid. They go into the movie theater with their popcorn and basically say, "Let's watch the end of the movie." And suddenly we're back in Rock Ridge.
Right. And as Brad said, they ride off in the sunset together and then get off their horses and get in their limo and are driven away. And that's, it's just, I love that twist at the end. I think to me, that's what I really love about this movie. Like I said, I have issues with the language. I do. But that ending is so priceless and so unexpected and never done before. I mean, this is Mel Brooks' genius, that this ends so ridiculously. And the first screening of Blazing Saddles in Los Angeles, he had real cattle in the lobby. And he said after the first screening, one of the studio executives came up to him and said, "Mel, come with me and take notes." And he and John Calley and Mel went into an office, and he said, "You got to cut this. You got to cut the campfire scene, cut the scene of punching the horse, cut the N-word, cut Lily's song." And Mel said, whenever a studio executive tells you to cut things, just agree. Say, "Yes, do it. Yes, yes, absolutely. That's gone. Always agree, and then don't do it." Because once the film starts to make money, you don't hear from anybody. And that's exactly what happened. It made such a huge amount of money, no problem.
I want to ask about another legend I have something I've got to say about this movie. But before I do that, I'd heard that when Mel showed it to Warner Brothers execs, they basically sat there and didn't laugh at all and were not happy with this film.
Yeah.
So Mel went out and got some of the blue-collar workers from the lot and had the executives watch them laugh hysterically.
That's it. I mean, studio executives, we've said this before, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They just don't. And he's absolutely right. Always agree with them and then don't do it. And John Calley said, when they were done with the meeting, Mel Brooks took the notes, crumpled it up and threw it in the waste paper basket. And John Calley said, "Well filed." And that was it. But there was one cut. There were some other cuts, but there was one cut. And I want to know if you knew about this cut, Brad.
It's in the Twoo scene.
It's Twoo scene. Yeah. Do you want to tell that story or should I?
You can tell it.
Okay. So Lily Von Shtupp is hired by Hedley Lamarr to seduce Black Bart and destroy him. But Lily Von Shtupp, after she sings "I'm Tired," gets one look at Cleavon Little and she's like, "I'm not destroying this guy." So it's very fast scene. The lights go out and they're in the dark. And Lily says to him, she says, "Is it true about how you people are gifted?" And then there's a beat you hear. And this is all in black. "It's true."
Well, you hear a very loud zipper first.
You hear a loud zipper, right? And then you hear her say, "Oh, it's true. It's true." And the scene's over. Well, in the original shot, in the original filming of it, she says, "It's true. It's true." And then Cleavon Little's character said, "You're sucking on my arm."
The hysterical, but I'm glad they cut it.
Yeah.
I think it's better the way it ends.
Good cut.
It was a good cut. Now, the reason I said I have something to say before we move on, everybody remembers the fart scene, the around the campfire, the cowboys eating the beans, drinking the coffee, and farting.
Right.
And people think that's the funniest scene. there is a different scene that makes me laugh so hard every time because it is right out of a Warner Brothers cartoon. I could see Bugs Bunny doing it, and that is the toll booth.
Yes.
The Marauders are riding across the desert to get to the town and to ransack the town, and to slow them down, Bart builds a toll booth. You can easily go around the toll booth, of course, but he builds this toll booth, and they get to the toll booth, and Slim Pickens turns around and says, my favorite line of the movie, somebody has to go back and get a shitload of dimes.
It doesn't occur to them to just go around this standalone toll booth. They've got to go back and get dimes. And Slim Pickens is so fun. Oh, goddamn dimes. It's so funny because it's so outrageous. And this is why it's funny, is because they are so invested in the insanity. They're so believable.
Yes.
It's their reality. And that's what makes this movie work. That's what makes it so damned funny. So funny. And yeah, this movie was a tremendous, tremendous success. As I said, 3 Oscar nominations, Best Supporting Actress, Best Film Editing, and last but not least, the song, Blazing Saddles, that wonderful song that...
It's a great song.
It is a great song. It's a fabulous song. And, you know, what I want to say about the song is that, you know, Mel wrote it because Mel was a very gifted writer. I mean, just listen to the producers. He wrote the musical, the producers. The song Blazing Saddles was written by Mel and John Morris, and it was sung by Frankie Lane, who was a legendary singer of Western themes. He did Rawhide, the theme from Rawhide. And Mel said, wouldn't it be great if we could get a singer like Frankie Lane? And there you go.
So they got Frankie Lane.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to add is you are so uncomfortable with this film, and I am not the least bit uncomfortable. And I think part of the reason is my husband, Maurice, is no way am I implying that he speaks for Black people all across America. But it does help that my husband is a Black man, and he loves this film.
Well,
so
yeah. And I get it. I get it. It's not my... As I said, I have I prefer a kinder and gentler Mel Brooks, and that's why we're going to talk about our second movie. But I do appreciate this film, and I don't deny it that it's hysterically funny, and the performances are outrageous. So, all right, that was Blazing Saddles. Now I guess we're on to High Anxiety. What do you want to say about High Anxiety before I start, Brad?
I loved this film when it first came out. It is brilliant take on Alfred Hitchcock film.
Right.
There are some references that are very subtle and some references that are so in your face. And this is where I said I don't think it's timeless. You said you didn't know anything about Hitchcock when you watched it. I sat there and watched it the other day and I thought, I don't think this would be funny if you didn't know Hitchcock.
Oh,
because
God.
some of the jokes are so Hitchcockian.
But think about the characters for a minute.
Oh, the characters are great.
That's what makes it funny. Nurse Diesel, Cloris Leachman, Harvey Korman, again, is Dr. Montague. I mean, the characters are so funny. The situations are funny. And I really do believe that. I don't think that you need to know. Obviously, if you know Hitchcock, it makes it all the richer. And it makes it all the funnier. And you get, oh my God, he's making fun of, obviously, I knew the Birds. Everybody knew the Birds. But, the shots that mimic the shots in Vertigo or The Lodger, or the references to the spellbound characters. I mean, yes, it makes it so much funnier, but I don't believe you need to. I enjoy this movie just for the hysterically funny script and performances.
One thing I've got to agree with you on is the camera angle setup. The camera angles are funny, no matter what going through the window, the way they move. They're funny. I just think they're 10 times funnier if you're familiar that those are Hitchcock inventions.
I agree with you.
They're shots we take for granted today.
I agree with you. But I mean, I'm not telling a lie. I really hadn't seen much Hitchcock before I saw this. In this movie, one of my absolute favorite movies, a huge movie when I was in college, like What's Up, Doc? We would quote continually, the Drapes in the Psychotic Game Room. We would talk about, dinner is served promptly at 8 in the private dining room. Those who are tardy do not get fruit cup. And then she looks at Harvey Korman because Harvey Korman's always late. But anyway, High Anxiety, 20th Century Fox, 1977. They had just finished Silent Movie, and they're thinking they had just spoofed Westerns. They'd spoofed horror films with Young Frankenstein. They just spoofed silent film with Silent Movie. What are we going to do? Well, while they were making Silent Movie, they were watching Frenzy, and which is Hitchcock's penultimate film. It's not his last film. It's his next to last film. And they said, why don't we spoof Hitchcock? Because in Mel Brooks' mind, Hitchcock is a genre. Just like Westerns are a genre, like horror films are a genre. I mean, it's Hitchcockian, people say all the time. Yes, it's a genre. So they thought, why don't we spoof Hitchcock? And the people, the writers who were working on Silent Movie, Ron Clark, Rudy DeLuca, and Barry Levinson, who later went on to direct Diner, a great movie, all came up with this idea of spoofing Hitchcock. So they agreed they were going to make a film in which they could incorporate as many of their favorite scenes as they could into some kind of loose, crazy story. But there are four main films spoofed, four main Hitchcock films spoofed in High Anxiety. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, but just give me a couple, Brad, if you can name a couple.
The two that I think stand out for everyone, regardless if they've ever seen the movies or not, are The Birds and Psycho.
Correct.
We also have, obviously, Vertigo, which is my least favorite Hitchcock film, though I haven't seen them all.
Right.
North by Northwest is probably the one joke I think falls flat because it's a little too on your nose.
But think about it. What is Mel's name? What is Mel Brooks' name in High Anxiety?
Oh my,
Dr. Thorndike.
Oh, I was going to say Thorndike, but I thought that was the doctor that was before him.
Thorndike, and Cary Grant's name in North by Northwest is Roger. North by Northwest. In North by Northwest is Roger Thornhill. So there's your North by Northwest also. And you're missing the big one, Spellbound.
So I was about to say Spellbound.
Spellbound takes place in a mental institution.
With a new doctor.
So those are the main four: Spellbound, Vertigo, The Birds, and Psycho. Also hints at North by Northwest, The Wrong Man, Frenzy, The Lodger. There's
Dial-M for Murder.
There's little hints of all of them, but those are the main four. Because in High Anxiety, Mel Brooks plays Dr. Richard Thorndike, who is a psychiatrist who comes to work at the Institute for the Very, Very Nervous after Dr. Ashley, his predecessor, died under suspicious circumstances. And that's how the film starts. And there's also one other film that High Anxiety kind of dips into, and it's a 1955 film called The Cobweb. So it's not just Hitchcock. This is a 1955 Vincent Minnelli film called The Cobweb. It's about the goings-on at an Institute for Nervous Disorders, in which the staff are crazier than the patients. It's not a comedy either. It's a melodrama. And many of them obsess over the drapes in the clinic library. So that's where we get Nurse Cecil saying, the drapes in the psychotic game room.
So
yes.
funny.
Dr. Ashley felt.
He had big plans to change
Dr. Ashley felt that color has a great deal to do with the well-being of the emotionally disturbed. And so that's where the drapes come from the film The Cobweb from 1955. When they got a rough draft together, Mel Brooks knew that he had to get the blessing of Hitchcock. He knew, he wasn't going to move forward with this unless Hitchcock said it was okay. So he called him, and Hitchcock was a big fan of Blazing Saddles. Mel told Hitchcock that he was the greatest filmmaker who ever lived, and he wanted to create a faithful but satiric look at some of his most memorable scenes. So they went to Hitchcock's office at Universal. Mel had lunch with him. He read him the outline. He took it home. He came back. He gave him some pointers. And from then on, Mel would go to Hitchcock's office every Friday to work on the script. So Hitchcock was kind of a script doctor on High Anxiety. Because he would fix things. He said, no, that's not quite right. You got to do this, this, and this. And they developed it's really a heartwarming story, a wonderful friendship. And they would continue to have lunches even after High Anxiety was finished. They usually go to Chasen's and have these enormous lunches. And Mel Brooks told a very funny story about they would have a huge lunch, starting off with shrimp cocktail and beef Wellington and chocolate sundaes. And then sometimes they would be finished And Hitchcock would look up and call the waiter over and say, again. And he would have the entire meal again.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, that's Hitchcock. So Hitchcock actually helped write High Anxiety. He's uncredited. The film was dedicated to him. You really see Mel's love for Hitchcock. This is absolutely right. It is truly a faithful, satiric, and loving look at some of the funniest things in Hitchcock. Because the thing about Hitchcock is, and a lot of contemporary critics said this about High Anxiety, there's an awful lot of humor in Hitchcock. Hitchcock considered Psycho a dark comedy. So much of Hitchcock, North by Northwest, has wonderful touches of humor. I think the only one that doesn't have a lot of humor is Vertigo. But that's just because you and I, neither one of us are crazy about Vertigo. But think about, there's humor in Rear Window. There's humor in Strangers on a Train. I mean, there's an awful lot of humor. So it's kind of hard to satirize something which is also already somewhat humorous. But I think he does an amazing job. I really do.
Yeah. I looked at numerous reviews from critics, and that is what I heard time and time again, especially, I think, Siskel and Ebert, but a lot of other reviewers said the same thing. And the whole time I'm thinking, it just seemed nitpicky, and I thought, in my opinion, quite dumb, because I felt like they were looking for something. I think he did a great job. Yes, there's lots of humor in Hitchcock films, but there's no reason why you can't take it a level further, which is what Brooks is great at.
It is totally what he's great at. And it's an affectionate satire. That's the thing about
totally.
Mel Brooks. It's done with such love. All of Mel Brooks' satires really are. I mean, I think that's true with Blazing Saddles. I think that's true, certainly true with Young Frankenstein. It's an affectionate look at Hitchcock and a take on Hitchcock. And I think one of the most interesting things is, and we hinted at it a little bit, one of Hitchcock's, Brooks noticed that one of his hallmarks is the camera is like another character.
Mm-hmm.
The way the camera moves. We just talked about Rope last season with Steven. The way Hitchcock filmed Rope, yeah, it was a gimmick, making it look like one big long take, but that camera moves like a person in Rope. I guess probably the most famous is Notorious, the scene with the key in Ingrid Bergman's hand, and how the camera starts way up high and comes down in one long shot until it's virtually a close-up of the key in her hand. The camera movements, and he does that in High Anxiety. He does that when the camera. One of the best scenes is when the camera is under the glass table. When
oh my God,
Nurse Diesel and Dr. Montague are planning Dr. Thorndyke's death. And the camera's watching them through this glass table. And every time they take a sip from their coffee, they put the plate down and it blocks the camera view. So the camera moves. And then they put another plate down and it blocks the camera view. Then it moves again until finally Cloris Leachman picks up a big tray and says, "Shut up and finish your strudel." And she just put this plate down. It entirely blocks the camera view. It's one of the hysterical scenes. But this is the kind of stuff he did. It's a wonderful, wonderful takeoff on Hitchcock. Another reason why I think that, like I said, I don't think you have to know Hitchcock to love this movie are the characters. Let's talk about some of these characters here. First of all, when they were writing the script, they said, we need for the role of Richard Thorndike, the doctor, the main character, they said, we need a Cary Grant type for this role. And Mel said, that's me, I'll do it. So he did. So he cast himself as the lead. And I think, your opinion on this, I think he looks pretty good in this movie. I was always struck by, he's a very cute man. He's a cute, cuddly Mel Brooks, but I think he looks pretty handsome in this film. I think so. I think he's great.
I think he did great. I think he looks, because he's kind of unassuming in a assuming kind of way.
Yeah, no, he's great. I think he's incredibly charming. He's Mel Brooks. He's incredibly
it's impressive how well he did.
Yeah, I mean, he's not Cary Grant, but nobody was Cary Grant. Cary Grant wasn't Cary Grant.
Right.
But he certainly fills the role. And here we go with these other characters, which we've kind of briefly touched on. The brilliant Harvey Korman playing Dr. Montague. After working with him on Blazing Saddles, Mel kept trying to find opportunities for him. And I guess there wasn't an opportunity for him in Young Frankenstein or Silent Movie. But Dr. Montague, he's such a slimy, sleazy character, and nobody plays better than Harvey Korman.
And this is something that interested me because it's been a while since I saw High Anxiety, and I thought, okay, Korman is kind of the villain in this film. I wonder if he's going to be identical to
Headley.
The character to Headley in Blazing Saddles. And I was kind of concerned about that. And no, he wasn't. He was
No.
sleazy, but he was also insecure, I guess, for lack of a better word.
He's very effete. He's very
Yes.
effete, and he's basically he's whipped by Nurse Diesel.
Yes.
I mean, they are in an S&M relationship, and he's
Yeah.
definitely the M part of that relationship. But yeah, he's very much a milk toast. He's very much a namby-pamby kind of. He's just a sleazy character, and Corman is so brilliant. And when we talk about farce and we talk about a spoof, and I say, what makes these things work is the actor's absolute dedication to their reality. And that there's no better example of that than in the fruit cup scene. So, Nurse Diesel has already said dinner is served promptly at 8, and those who are tardy do not get fruit cup. And then she looks up at Dr. Montague and leaves. So we know he's always late. So they're having dinner, and the fruit cups are there, and there's no Dr. Montague. So she rings the bell, and the server comes and takes away the fruit cup. And at that moment, Harvey Korman comes tripping down the stairs. He's like floating because he knows he's late, but he's going to make it. He's skipping down the stairs. He does a little hop. He runs over to the table. He sits down. He takes his napkin out with a flourish. He flips his napkin, puts it on his lap, takes a look at Nurse Diesel, gives her a little smile, grabs his spoon, goes down to his fruit cup, and brings up air. And that's when he realizes the fruit cup is gone. He goes through this entire machinations of having some, and it doesn't get to the very last moment when he brings up a spoonful of air to his mouth. Does he realize that it's this kind of dedication that makes this so funny.
And going back to Hedley Lamarr, this is where I really see that there was a difference and it shows his genius. Hedley was a clown, but at all times he was self-confident.
Right.
Never lost his confidence. That is totally different with Montague.
Completely. He's completely different. He's the genius of Harvey Korman. And, just as, the other side of that coin, we've talked about it before, Cloris Brando. I mean, I don't think there was a more gifted character actress than Cloris Leachman, but beautiful. That's the thing about Cloris Leachman. We forget because she does these characters which she makes herself hideous. Cloris Leachman was a beauty queen. She began her career in beauty pageants. So, she's beautiful as Phyllis. She's a beautiful woman, but she would do these things to herself. I mean, look what she did to herself in Young Frankenstein, and Nurse Diesel has to be, in my opinion, like her utmost creation. What she does with Nurse Diesel.
It's tremendous. I heard Cloris interviewed years ago, and she was talking about the characters that Mel always gives her. And she said, every movie I have more moles and bigger warts.
But these are her choices.
Yeah.
These are her choices. I'm going to do a little plug. I told this to Brad before we started recording. I did a documentary on high anxiety with Mel Brooks, and with Cloris Leachman was there, and Dom DeLuise's son, because he'd passed by then. Harvey Korman had also passed. And Cloris talked about that. She talked about the fact that she created Nurse Diesel. Okay. The documentary is on the Blu-ray. So unfortunately, unless you have the Blu-ray, you don't get to see it. I put it on my YouTube channel and they took it down. Damn it. So anyway, she's the one who came up with that costume. She's the one who came up with the pointed bra, the cone-shaped bra. She felt she was unbalanced with the cone-shaped bra. So she wanted a hump on her back to kind of balance the fact that her boobs were sticking straight out. The black wig, the very pallid complexion. And according to Mel, she showed up to their first scene in her full attire, never having seen her before, with the pointed cone breasts, the black wig, and a slightly hairy lip. And Mel said, we're going to be able to see that in the close-up, Cloris. And she said, I know, I put it there. He thought she just had a little hairy lip. So, I mean, she created this look. She created the talk, the distinct Nurse Diesel talk with the sibilance. And she's just a genius character out of the mind of Cloris Leachman. Brilliant.
And I think you told me before that the lipstick on her teeth was an accident and
She
They
kept
left it
there.
there.
Yeah, that's another thing she said. She said she looked and she saw she had lipstick on her teeth in the dinner scene, and she said, "Oh, it looks good. I'll keep it there." I mean, whatever could make. We always talk about Lucy making herself look ridiculous. Cloris Leachman was the queen of that. Nobody made herself look more ridiculous and more believably so than Cloris Leachman. And it's a genius movie.
And she didn't play it for comedy.
She did. Well, that's, as I've said,
That's the best comedy.
That's what comedy is. You don't play comedy like you're playing a comedy. You play comedy like you're playing a drama. Because especially a farce, you have these actors have to believe 150% in what they're doing. Otherwise, it doesn't play. You can't do that. You have to play it like it's Medea, as I said before. Some of these other characters, Ron Carey. Remember when I said that High Anxiety isn't all Hitchcock? I talked about the cobweb. There was actually a character actor from the 30s and 40s named Edward Brophy that Ron Carey's character of Brophy is based on. And he was like a henchman. He was like a sidekick. And he would say things in these films like, "Gee, boss, I couldn't find a cab anywhere. Gee, boss." And that's what Ron Carey's character is based on. But Ron Carey also used to do the sketch comedy bit where he played a weightlifter. And his tagline was, "I got it. I got it. I got it. I ain't got it." And so that's why that's in there.
I figured that had to come from somewhere, and I had no idea. And I love when Brophy introduces himself to Thorndike. He says, "I'm your limo driver and sidekick."
Driver and sidekick.
They had sidekick in there.
Yeah, just like Edward Brophy. Do you know who Howard Morris plays Dr. Lil Ullman? Do you recognize?
I'm not familiar with him. I know his face. I knew right away who he is.
I was going to ask you a question. He's most well known for playing a certain character on a TV show from the 60s. And I was going to ask you if you knew who it was.
I want to say the chemist on Bewitched, but that's not it, because he was the guy from, I can't think of his name, guy from Love Boat.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Ernie Coppell.
Yeah.
He was Ernest T. Bass on the
Oh, my Lord.
show.
Oh, man. And he was a producer or director?
He was also a producer and director. He actually directed some episodes of Bewitched. But he worked with Mel way back in the 50s with Sid Caesar. He's in a very funny takeoff of This Is Your Life that they did on either Your Shows or Caesar's Hour. And so he knew Mel from them. So Mel loved the fact that he could bring his buddy from working with Sid Caesar onto the show. And he's wonderful. Dr. Lil Ullman is based on a character in Spellbound. He's based on the character of Dr. Brulov in Spellbound. So there's another Hitchcock allusion.
Professor Little Old Man.
Little Oldman. Now climb, you son of a bitch, climb. I'm just going to throw lines out there. People would be like, I hope everybody's watched High Anxiety before they listen to this, because otherwise this makes no sense. So also we have, because it is a Going Hollywood podcast and because it's Mel Brooks, yes, we have the sublime goddess Madeline Kahn. Madeline plays Victoria Brisbane, who is doing a takeoff on every Hitchcock blonde there was, mostly Kim Novak, but also Vera Miles, Tippi Hedren. She has a long blonde wig, and her first appearance, Mel Brooks opens the door and she rushes in the room and says, "Get away from the door." She's so funny. And she's actually the one who came up with the sight gag that you love. Tell the people what the sight gag is that you love, that we talked about before, that Madeline Kahn, when she meets Dr. Thorndike after he's quote, done the murder.
Her outfits match her car.
Yes. She drives up in this Cadillac Seville covered with the Louis Vuitton pattern. She gets out and she's in the exact same jumpsuit as materials the same, clutching a Louis Vuitton bag. So her bag matches her pantsuit, matches her car. She has that much money. It's so funny. It was Madeline Kahn's idea. That was her idea. You know, what more can you say about Madeline Kahn? She's actually, in this one, she's probably the most subdued, I think, of all of her, because she's basically playing Kim Novak. She's playing Hitchcock's blonde, and there's not a lot there. But what she does, she just does wonderful, wonderful things. We should probably say that her father, Arthur Brisbane, is a patient at the Institute for the Very, Very Nervous. And she hasn't heard from him in weeks, and she's very concerned. And that's why she tracks down Mel Brooks' character. And Mel Brooks was introduced to Dr. Brisbane by Cloris Leachman's character, by Nurse Diesel and Dr. Montague, as a Cocker Spaniel. It's another patient that they said was Arthur Brisbane. And people always say to her, she goes, "He's my father." And they say, "You're the Cocker's daughter?" Because they think he's a Cocker Spaniel. So anyway, that's why Victoria Brisbane meets Dr. Thorndyke, and they realize something's going on at the Institute for the Very, Very Nervous, and they need to investigate what happens. But what prevents them from going back? What is the plot point that prevents them from going back to the Institute to when they're in San Francisco at the hotel? What happens that prevents them from going back?
Mel Brooks Thorndyke, is framed for a murder.
That's right. He's framed for a murder. And who frames? What's the character's name that actually shoots the man that frames Dr.
I don't remember. I know he's a takeoff on Jaws from the James Bond films.
He's played by one of the writers, Rudy DeLuca. His name is Braces.
Braces,
because Cloris certainly goes, "Hello, Braces." Yes, he's one of the writers. Rudy DeLuca plays Braces, the one who is the killer. Also, Barry Levinson, as we said before, who is one of the writers, also has a role in High Anxiety. All three writers have roles. He plays Dennis the bellboy. And he is a very high-strung bellboy. And he, along with Mel Brooks, recreate probably the most famous scene in horror film history. And do you want to give us a little bit of background about what they're recreating when they do that?
Well, they're recreating the shower scene from Psycho.
Right, exactly. And how do they do that?
The bellboy, he has been repeatedly told by Brooks that he wants a newspaper. Yeah. And he keeps putting off. First, he's like, "We don't have a newspaper in the hotel. I'd have to go down the street. I didn't feel like it." And Brooks keeps having to complain that he wants his newspaper. So Brooks is in the shower. It's almost identical in shots.
It is. It's almost shot
to Psycho. Yeah, almost shot per shot. It's like you're watching Psycho, but with Brooks there.
Yes, instead of Janet Leigh getting in the shower, it's Mel Brooks.
And you see this shadowy figure coming up to the shower curtain, just like in Psycho, and the arm is raised, and the curtain opens, and he starts jabbing Thorndyke with the newspaper, screaming about the newspaper. "Here's your newspaper."
Well, the funny thing about Barry Levinson is Barry Levinson had this gift where he could make his voice go higher and higher and higher.
Oh my God, yes.
So as Dennis is getting more and more irritated, each time he's reminded to get the newspaper, "All right, I'll get your newspaper. I'll get your lousy, stinking newspaper." It gets higher and higher and higher. So finally, when he gets the paper and Mel's in the shower and the figure comes up behind the shower curtain with his arm raised, and he pulls it back, and it's Dennis with his paper rolled up like it was the knife, and starts stabbing Mel with the newspaper. He goes, "Here's your paper! Here's your paper! Happy now? Happy!" And he goes higher and higher and higher.
And the beauty is, one of the most memorable things about the stabbing in the shower in Psycho is the blood flowing down the drain at the end.
Yes.
And in this movie, we see the ink from the paper.
Yes. In Hitchcast, the ink substitutes for the blood going around the drain. And then you get that shot of Mel, just like you get a shot of Janet Leigh and her eye open. Mel's eyes open, but he's not dead. He says, "That kid gets no tip." So that's a very famous scene. Hitchcock loved that scene. He said two things to Mel. He said, "I love the newsprint going down the drain, but you missed 2 shower rings."
Yes.
Which, Alfred Hitchcock. What is the second best scene in this film that's a takeoff that you love?
Oh, the bird.
Yes, of course.
It's the slapstickiest, if that's a word, scene in the whole movie. And if it was another movie, I wouldn't think it was that funny, but my God, it was perfect.
It's so fun. It's only, according to Mel Brooks, it was the only scene that Hitchcock laughed at out loud during the screening. And it's basically, it's a takeoff on the birds. He's at a park and all of these pigeons conglomerate just like they do in the birds on a jungle gym. And he starts to get up slowly. And sure enough, The pigeons follow him, but they're not diving at him. They're pelting him with bird shit. Which was a mixture, which Mel Brooks said was a mixture of mayonnaise and spinach. And it looks like it. And he literally, by the end of the scene, he is covered in this bird shit. And Mel Brooks said that actually a couple of them were actual real bird shit. Some of the pigeons let loose on him. These were the actual pigeons, not the same pigeons from the birds, but the trainer. Hitchcock introduced him to the guy who trained them in the birds. So he trained these pigeons to do this for high anxiety, which is a incredibly fortuitous thing when you think about it. Well, when you're working with Hitchcock and he's your script doctor on your takeoff on high anxiety, makes sense. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the funniest scenes ever.
Yeah, and I was sitting there watching it because, in the movie The Birds, you can kind of see the birds are superimposed at times, and they were real and then some were fake. I sat there and watched this movie and I'm like, how did they do that? It looked so real. Was it really real? I'm like, no, it couldn't have been. I guess it was.
Yeah, no, they used they were above the camera and they were shooting these pellets of mayonnaise and spinach onto Brooks, which makes him covered in bird poop. It's so funny. It's so funny. And because it's Mel Brooks, we have to have a song. And in High Anxiety, we have the song High Anxiety. Mel with Dr. Thorndike and Victoria are at a piano bar. And Dr. Thorndike, who's a psychiatrist, he's not a singer. They say, why don't you go ahead and sing something? And Victoria and Madeline Kahn eggs him on. And he goes, okay, do you know High Anxiety? Just like he's saying.
So random.
Yeah. Do you know Stardust? Do you know High Anxiety? Do you know My Melancholy Baby? And so Dr. Thorndike gets up with the mic in his hand and suddenly turns into Frank Sinatra. And Mel Brooks does a peerless Frank Sinatra takeoff of High Anxiety. He even does the, how Sinatra would leave out words and put in sounds. He goes like, ooh, anxiety. He whips the mic cord around. And at one point he whips the mic cord and Madeline Kahn goes, ooh. Oh, it's such a fun movie. And in the end, of course, they make it back to the Institute for the Very, Very Nervous. They get her father just in time. Norton, one of the hoodlums at the Institute, is about to throw him off a very familiar tower, one that you might have seen in the Hitchcock movie called Vertigo. It's not the same tower, but same idea. Dr. Thorndike overcomes his high anxiety in time to save Dr. Brisbane from being thrown off out of the tower. And just when they think they're safe, they're like, oh, it's over, thank God. The door falls, and here comes Cloris Leachman in a witch's outfit. And she, of course, goes to lunge at them. She's got a broom in her hand, and she goes to lunge at them, and she misses, and she falls out the window. And you see her start to fall, and suddenly she works the broom around to where she's riding it.
And she's cackling.
She's cackling.
She's cackling and sitting on this broom, and you expect her to fly off.
Yes, you do.
That's what I'm excited. And then a very graphic scene of her hitting the rocks.
She hits the rocks, and goodbye, Nurse Diesel. Goodbye, nursey, nurse. But when she came out in that witch's outfit, it's just so outrageous and funny. It's so funny. And I think Harvey Korman's behind her, but Harvey Korman gets hit with a door and falls over. I don't think he plunges out the window. I think
that's when the door hits him. That's the last.
He's fine because he never liked her. I don't know, liked her. She never bathed. He's so ready to change sides. That's what he is. He's one of these guys. He's so ready to change sides. So that's High Anxiety. At the end, Dr. Thorndike and Victoria Brisbane get married, and that's how it ends. And we're treated to the High Anxiety waltz as the credits roll. And it's just, for me personally, and we've talked about this, I just find it such a delight. I put that movie on. It's one of these movies I put on, and from the very opening scene in the airport, when that woman's holding the umbrella and she's screaming and he thinks she's going to attack him, but she's so excited to see her loved one at the airport. I just start laughing. I just laugh, and laugh.
What a dramatic airport.
What a dramatic airport. I love it. I love it. The thing I want to talk about too with the breaking the fourth wall, another one of my favorite scenes, is the dinner scene. We talked about the camera being a person in Hitchcock films, and this is what Brooks does in this. Not only the scene shot under the glass table, but when they're all having dinner at the Institute, and we're outside the dining room, and it's beautiful French doors, and the camera's pulling in closer and closer to get into the scene, and it goes a little too far, and it breaks the glass of the door, and they all stop and look up. And then the camera kind of shyly pulls away, like, oops, I didn't mean to do that. It's just such a funny little bit. And then they continue with the scene.
They don't say a word. They look over.
They don't say a word. They just all stop and look. And at the end of the movie, the camera does the same thing. It pulls back from Mel Brooks and Madeline Kahn as they're in bed, and it goes through the wall. And they do the same thing. They stop and they look up. And then the cameraman says, keep going. Maybe nobody will notice. And there's a big hole in the wall. Anyway, that's High Anxiety. I love it, love it, love it. I think that it's one of Mel Brooks' crowning achievements.
The desk clerk is Jack Riley.
Jack Riley. Oh, Dennis.
Yeah, most known for playing Mr. Carlson or Mr. Carlin in the Bob Newhart Show. Mr. Carlin, the very neurotic jerk on Bob Newhart Show. And I keep wondering, was he chosen? The main theme of this story, or the backdrop of this story, is the psychiatric hospital. So I'm like, was he chosen for that? And I'm like, no, they would have put him in the psych ward most likely.
No, he was.
I don't know.
He was just a friend of Mel Brooks. He's okay. That's just like Dick Van Patten. We didn't talk about Dick Van Patten in one of the funniest, most terrifying death scenes I think ever. Dick Van Patten dies of a busted eardrum because he's trying to escape the Institute. He's a doctor. He's Dr. Wentworth. And he's trying to escape the clutches of Nurse Diesel, and they let him go, but they're going to kill him. And he's trapped in his car, and his radio is on, and he can't turn it off. It's been rigged, and it's playing this loud rock song called "If You Love Me, Baby, Tell Me Loud," and it gets louder and louder until finally he dies of a busted eardrum. Which is another brilliant scene. No, he was a friend, just like Dick Van Patten, just like Howard Morris. Mel Brooks, we talked about this during What's Up Doc. Mel Brooks surrounded himself with basically a repertory company. And these people that he would use again and again and plug them in different films. Madeline Kahn, obviously Harvey Korman. We talked about Liam Dunn and John Hillerman. And I mean, just he loved using people. Cloris Leachman, Gene Wilder. Using people again and again that he trusted and that he knew would deliver. And that's just who he was. And that's such a funny scene.
Let me give you ideas of things that I don't think would work if you aren't familiar with Hitchcock, especially today's world, where I've even heard people say, who's Hitchcock? Oh. It makes my skin crawl. Vertigo.
Yeah.
So whenever Mel is dealing with high anxiety, you see him falling with the circle spinning behind him, just like they did in Vertigo.
Right.
If you never saw Vertigo, you'd be just like, what is with these cheesy special effects? I think that is really cheesy.
Well, I think
I could be wrong.
No, I think you'd get that maybe you didn't know what they were spoofing, but you know he was spoofing something. I mean, it's just you would just know that. I really do think that's the case. I don't think it's essential. Yes, it makes it much, much more satisfying viewing to know what they're spoofing. But we just told you. So go watch High Anxiety.
Let us know what your experience is. If you're not familiar with Hitchcock and you watched this film and enjoyed it, or you know people that did, it's hard when you're familiar with them to kind of because I was thinking maybe I should watch it again with the blinders on, but that's impossible.
No, you can't.
So we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, and don't. You have the knowledge of it, makes it all the funnier. And speaking of reactions, who did love it was the man himself. Hitchcock loved it.
Hitchcock, yeah.
Mel said he was really worried at the screening. He was at the first screening, and because he didn't laugh. He only laughed at the scene with the birds. He knew. But he said he got back to his office the next day, and there was a case of champagne and a lovely note from Hitchcock saying how much he loved it. And as I said, they were friends for the rest of Hitchcock's life. So I don't think you can ask for a better testimonial than that. It was a hit.
Two geniuses.
Didn't make quite as much money as Blazing Saddles, but it still made $31 million, which was on a budget of $4 million, that's quite a payday. So, Mel Brooks went on after this to do more spoofs. He did, Spaceballs, Robin Hood, Men in Tights. I think, though, this was really his golden era, from Blazing Saddles to High Anxiety. I think the 70s, the 70s were his time. And I think I have issues with History of the World. I think it's a little too, I like some scenes in it very much. I think they're very funny, but I think some of it's a little tasteless, a lot of it. And that's the thing about Mel Brooks is he straddles that line. It's a very tight line. And I find parts of History of the World a little tasteless, but it's a fun movie. But I think these were really his prime periods. And I think we have two films here which absolutely illustrate that.
I didn't like History of the World when I saw it in the theater. I was really disappointed. When I watch it now, I laugh more. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely, to me, too over the top for Mel Brooks. It's the same way I feel about Spaceballs. There's humor in both of them, but I think he goes a little too far and doesn't take them serious enough. I think this was definitely his great period as far as films go. Now, as far as how High Anxiety did, it was only the 17th top grossing film in 1977. Mm-hmm. But you got to look at the films that it was up against. Star Wars, the first one, Star Wars 4, A New Hope. Close Encounters of the Third Kind was number 2. Saturday Night Fever was number 3. Smoking the Bandit, number 4. I don't think that movie stands up today. Yeah. And then The Goodbye Girl, number 5. It had some movies that were top of the heap there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but I think personally, and I think maybe it's not quite as, it's not as outrageous as Blazing Saddles. True. But I love the affection that Brooks clearly has for Hitchcock. It's just shown in this, and it's just a delightful, silly movie. I love putting on it, and I just laugh from the beginning to the end.
And I will say that is probably for the first time that I kind of thought, I don't know about this movie because I've always loved it. I think part of the reason I got that is I watched Blazing Saddles one night, and the very next night I watched High Anxiety, and I'm like, God, this is kind of slow, but it's not. It's not the same film.
It's not the same film. Wow. Well, that's our season premiere, Brad. Blazing Saddles and High Anxiety. That's a lot. Listener, we want to say too, we already have a lot of stuff, great stuff scheduled coming up. We have some great theme months coming up. We're going to try this time. We also have some interesting guest stars, some fun guest stars lined up. It's going to be, I'm really excited about some of the movies and TV shows we're going to talk about coming up, Brad.
I'm excited too. We have a great list. We did some brainstorming before the season began, so we can be ahead of ourselves, unlike last season. You may thought it was fine. We got it every week, but boy, behind the scenes, we were struggling.
Not this year. Not this year. But we have some exciting stuff coming up. So please, by all means, as always, tell your friends, please send us messages, a text message. We'll have our Spotify playlist. Although the soundtrack for High Anxiety is pretty much already up there because Brad put it up there for our episode last year. And unfortunately, High Anxiety isn't on Spotify, but it's on YouTube. So I'll leave a link. We'll leave a link to that on the YouTube page. Also, I'll put a link to my documentary I did with Mel and Cloris and those people. It's called Spoofing the Master of Suspense. Mel and Hitchcock. It's a cute one. And if you don't have a Blu-ray, you can't watch it. Sorry. Well, Brad, do we have anything else to say about Blazing Saddles and High Anxiety and our season premiere?
I think we started with a bang.
We did. This was a big one. It was a long one, but it needed to be because it's our premiere. So I guess there's nothing left to say, but I don't want to say it. So you know what? Let's not say goodbye, Brad. Let's just say High Anxiety, you win. Bye, everybody.
Come to my room right after dinner.
No, not tonight. I'm too tired. I think I'm going to turn in early.
I'll let you wear my underwear.
I'll be there.